Mixing pianos in Soundtrap in depth. Let's go. This one's for that lo-fi track that I had. It'll be pattern wise for this tutorial in the beginning and then mixing wise for the second half. I'm gonna go over how I made the actual notes that I'm playing in this one because it's a really important thing and it's easy to learn without a bunch of music theory knowledge. And then I'll go over how to make pianos sound good, or at least how I made them sound good in this final product. Here's the original. And here's the mixed. Let's go. I made this pattern with Soundtrap's free pianizer instrument. No music makers, didn't have to pay for anything. Free instrument piano. So here's how I did that. I kept everything in the key of C major and made extended chords out of them. To keep everything in the key of C major sticking only to the white notes is how you do that. You see there's a bunch of gray notes right here. Those are the black keys, and then there's the white keys that are like there. If you stay in C major, you'll stay within key, and then you could shift other keys once you're done making this, but I just kept mine in C major. So I started with the process of just making a chord. I went from D right here, and then the method is to find a white note, skip a white note, and then play the next one, and that just makes a chord that's in key. Then I went over to F. F made it like that. Did it one more time to A. A did it just like that. Did it one more time to C. Did it one more time to E. I started with this chord. Looks like I chopped the rhythm up a bit. I had the first chord. Then I took them all, duplicated them by holding the Option key on my Mac and dragging it over to make a new chord. I did the same thing with the next chord. Shortened that chord up a bit, did the same thing, but shifted the chord one tone down. Now it'll be like a C extended chord. And then I made sure the pattern fit between having the root note on a white, skipping a white key, going to the next one, shifted this one up. That one looks good. Shifted this one up, and that one looks good. I'll take every single note, Option drag over to here, and just change the notes. This chord originally was an E right here, so I shifted it from E, skip one white, put, skip one white, that, skip one white, that, white key, skip one, white key, skip one, white key, skip one, white key, skip one, white key. And the last chord repeated this one. I lowered the velocity of all of these because it was really, really harsh. Went over, highlighted all of the notes, went to V up here in the top right, and took the velocities of everyone down to about there to start with. So we had this. I wanted to spread this out and make this like a bigger chord. The bigger these chords are, the longer they range, the more complete the sound is, and I really wanted this to be like the main part about the beat. I went over and I duplicated these bottom Ds, Option dragged them to make the same note of the same one, and dropped them from D3 to D2, so it sounds like this. And then also I kicked another D up all the way up top. Took myself out of velocity mode, and then I put another D right up top. Did the same drop of an octave with this note. And for these ones, I just took out these two notes because I didn't think they sounded too good. It was just a little bit messy of a chord by this point, so it sounded like this so far. This chord I did something special with. I thought it was really cool to have an inversion of this chord, which means you're not using the bottom note in the chord as the bottom note, but you're using one of these top notes lower than the root or the note you started with. I did that with this B, so I brought the B all the way down to here. That gave this line a smooth descent. And I also put a B in the bass. Took this note out because it didn't sound too good, and took these top notes out because they didn't sound too good. So I had this. Sounded a lot better to me. Made another bass note to complete that chord, and then left the last chord pretty much untouched and just did my bass note again. And we had this from the start. After that, I basically added the melody onto this section by taking out some notes and just releasing them to the notes that are already in these chords. So what do I mean by that? As you can see up here, it's basically a duplicate of this part, but this one has the melody. I just took this note, which usually was just playing the whole time in this E, cut it up until here, and then replaced the top section with the note right above it. Shorten that note a bit so you have this little fall into this note. So it's like the whole chord plays, and then it gives you that extra tone that was always meant to be there, but you're just taking it out just to put it back in and add more richness right after. I also did the same to this note. I broke up this note into sections. I took it to that length, added this note before it, so it goes bum, bum, bum. And this whole thing acts like a line now of a melody that's playing with notes that were already in those chords. The same thing over here. I just added these two notes down here to give a little bit of a return to the next chord. Those are a little loud because of the velocities again, so I'll take them down. I just extended these two notes up top to make them long and not choppy when the next chord comes back. And then just one little melody note right here ended the entire phrase. I also added this little right up top just to give a little bit of a sparkle. After I was done here, I humanized all of the notes, which means I shifted them slightly over like a real piano player would have instead of doing everything at the exact same time. This makes it not sound like a computer and sound like a rich, nice piano. So I just went into every note and kind of shortened the time that it came in at, maybe even a lot smaller. To get a really fine measurement, you go in really, really close, and instead of locking to one note or the other like this, you can hold down shift and then it just goes anywhere that you want in the middle. Go into all these. I delay this one a lot so it gives a like pling kind of tone. This is a huge part about getting them to sound good. A lot of the times it isn't a bunch of effects that you use or a bunch of other little things. It's just getting good sound coming out of the speakers, and this is how you do it. And it's just the nitty gritties of getting down to like, oh, this sounds like a computer made this beat instead of a human being. Sounds like this. Now we're on to the fun stuff. After I did that, if you could see, I have 3 pianizer tracks on top of this main one. What I did was I duplicated this track 3 separate times, and then I took out notes in every single one of these patterns. So this is one piano track. No, it only has like 2 lines right here. Then I took out this piano track and noticed that it has a different set of a couple different lines from what I just had. And we have another set of the rest of the lines that we just had, and they're all split up into different tracks. Here's why I split them up. If we mute the original track that we just had, where we have every single note on one track, and highlight all 3 of these tracks, we'll notice that it sounds the same, but it'll be a little bit different. So here's what it sounds like with only the main track, and every note is on one track. And then here's 3 separate tracks with notes all on there adding up to one. If you're in headphones, you'll notice this, it's wider. And if you're on a phone as well, you'll hear the difference in the top and bottom speakers if they're stereo speakers, but that depends on your phone. Whatever it is, there is a distinct difference between these two because one does have effects also, but it's split up a lot wider. I did that because every single track is one panned up the center, the second one is panned to the right, and the third one is panned to the left. So we have 3 pianos playing right here, here, and here instead of one piano in the middle playing everything. If we go into the effects, we'll see something really, really key to making this sound good, and it's this vibrato plugin. Having pitch variation anywhere is super, super. Fun fact, the lo-fi upright piano sound that's only available through music makers is just a regular piano sound with a vibrato on it. You're welcome. Energetic. If you're mixing and you want something to have more energy, add natural pitch shifting, especially when it's high-end information, to the sound to give it this moving, dynamic sense of pitch and energy. to what you have. I learned this from Dave Pensato, great tip I saw a while ago. This vibrato plugin does that, and it also emulates what a bunch of popular plugins that people like Kenny Beats are really making part of their brand is the RC20 and tape machine like things that add texture to the instrument, but what it's doing is doing this pitch variability, which makes them have more energy. Without the vibrato plugin, one of these tracks sound like this. With the vibrato plugin, can you hear that? It's super subtle, and on a bunch of different pianos it'll really have a major effect, but it goes instead of, if you know what I mean. If I increase the depth, we'll really notice it. Right about there was my sweet spot. After that, I added an EQ and cut out a bunch of the low end and boosted a little bit of the high end. See what that sounds like? That really cleaned things up, made it not muddy, made this a high-end instrument. Then I just added compressors to level out the volume and make it pretty loud and upfront. I added basically the exact same effects on every single other of these piano tracks because I wanted them to sound pretty familiar. Didn't put the exact same EQ on a bunch of them because some take up the low end, some take up the high end. But I took this vibrato off this track because it was the lowest one. You usually don't want to pitch shift a lot of the low end frequencies as much as you can. If it's a bass instrument especially, you don't want that moving too much. You could have things like that. If you're recording acoustic instruments, it's not something you want to change a lot if there's like a band that you're recording. But having this vibrato plugin on like a bass or an 808 always sounds bad to me. So I'd stay out of the low end stuff, keep it on the high end stuff. The effect works just as hard or just as much. Yeah. The third piano had this effects chain on them. Again, kept the vibrato on. This was a little bit more low end though. Didn't matter. It sounded good. All three of these together, it sounded like this. And remember, we got it from this sound. After this, I put in my lo-fi track. Sounds like this. Leave a comment for what you guys want to see next. Thank you guys just for watching. A like and a sub also goes a long way for a channel like that. It really helps with the algorithm. Thank you guys just for watching though. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.